Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is the sports podcast, Yen's Dad and My Sports Podcast. And our guest today is Dave Lewandowski, lifelong Pittsburgh Steeler fan and lifelong Pittsburgher. And today we're going to be talking Pittsburgh Steelers, what it's like to be a season ticket holder. And we hope you enjoy the show. I'm Brad Richards, along with Brandon Richards, and we're going to get things fired up here. So, Dave, how you doing today on this beautiful day in the Berg? Is it so hot there?
Yeah, I think it's low 80s. I wasn't out yet today. I had some things to do here and, waiting to come on and do the show, but I appreciate it. And thanks. Have a good, we're going to have a good show.
Yeah. Well, son, what's it look like up at your neck of the woods today?
It looks pretty good. Going to be a good day to go out and cut some grass because, that's what we do in the month of July, right? In August and September and part of October and sometimes November. So there's always more grass to be cut. So that's going to be my fun after we get done having our real fun now.
That's good. Well, I'm not going to talk about grass because it's 105 down here in the Garland area near Dallas, and it's super hot. So unless you're going to cut grass at 7:00, it's a no-go. So that's how it's going to be. So, well, let's get things started. Dave, we're talking Steelers today, and let's give your impressions. What's it like to be a lifelong Steeler fan of one of the storied franchises in the NFL?
Well, we've had a lot of ups, I think, since I've been around, through the 70s and, little downward in the 80s and then back up through the 90s, the 2000s with a few years here and there, just like any other team. But I think we've been pretty successful overall based on our coaches and how we've played the game. But, you always have those seasons where, man, you don't think they're going to come back from it, but they always seem to do, to come back.
Yeah. What was it like, Dave, in the mid 70s and, winning Super Bowls and all that? I mean, what kind of confidence did you have as a Steeler fan before the season started compared to what it's like now?
I can honestly say I was probably, when they were winning their first two Super Bowls, I probably wasn't into it quite yet. Like, I think a lot of people, their kids are in it real young nowadays, 5, 6, 7, watching the game. I was probably a little later back then. So I remember the years of the last Super Bowl, two Super Bowls of the 70s mostly. So maybe 70, 77, 78, 79, was probably the years that I really got into, going to the games and understanding it and just, and what a way to start loving your team. They're winning Super Bowls every
year. Yeah. That was that saying that Tomlin came up with. The standard is the standard, and not to jump ahead, but I heard McCarthy actually took that down in the locker room. So
really,
he's got kind of his own standard he's going to be using this year. But I think that's interesting. But hey, let's talk about get on the season ticket thing a little bit.
And well, before we talk about that, maybe the standard isn't 9 and 8 then, or anything better than 8 wins or above. Maybe we're moving past that standard.
Yeah, and then I guess you guys probably heard this too, Dave. Keep your thought on the season ticket thing for a minute, but it was funny when they were interviewing Mr. Rooney here, not this year, but the year prior, when, the announcer, he kind of got a little bit perturbed because they were talking about, not winning championships and all that. And he said, well, wait a minute. He said, we've done some winning around here. So it's not like, we're not winning, but I guess, his dad, wasn't satisfied unless they were competing for a Super Bowl. Like Brandon said, the standard's the standard, 8 and 8, 9 and 8, 10 and 7, so that's kind of interesting to see how the expectations have gone over the last few years.
Yeah, we've been clawing the last few years just to get to that 9 and 8, 10 and 7 and getting into the playoffs. But it still goes back to franchise quarterback. I mean, we know how it was for all those years with Roethlisberger, all the years when we had Bradshaw, in the 70s into the early 80s. You need that stability at quarterback. I mean, look at the Browns. They've had 40 quarterbacks since 1999, and they're still not winning. So.
No, and I guess Deshaun Watson is probably going to be their guy again this year, only because they still owe him $1 bazillion from that contract. But it's great to have the Brownies in our division.
Boy, we dodged a bullet with Deshaun Watson, didn't we? Because we all wanted him in Pittsburgh. Every Steeler fan, when he went to Cleveland, we were all like, oh, this is the worst thing. And then you saw what you paid him, and everyone's like,
He just imploded.
You're guaranteeing all of that? Okay. And then everybody got nervous. Like, is that the new market for quarterbacks? Is everything going to be guaranteed? Well, no, because only Cleveland would guarantee a quarterback their entire salary for their contract. So, boy, we really did dodge a bullet on that one, So
yeah,
it does seem to happen to Cleveland when it happens.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how many number one picks they have. They seem to just piss it away down the drain. Every year they do that. But this year they did pretty well. So we'll see what happens. So go ahead, Brandon. So Dave, what would you say is been the best benefit you've had of being a season ticket holder? I know that you've been a season ticket holder for a long time. What would you say is just the best benefit that
we've had them since my dad got when Three River Stadium opened? So you're figuring 1970. So what are we talking, 56 years? They've been in my name for a while, but my dad went until he couldn't. And, now I let my kids go sometimes, the late games, and I'm still working. So it's like, I don't want to come home at 1 or 1:30 and have to go to work the next day. But I tell you what, the Steelers, they've done some different things with their organization, with Steelers. They have a lot of functions that go on, giveaways, have you down on the field, different things like that as season ticket holders. But I think for us, we've always had good seats. No one's ever sat in front of us because we have first row seats, Three Rivers in the 200 level. We have first row seats at the field, at Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium, whatever you like to call it.
Hey, Dave, how did the seating thing work from Three Rivers Stadium to when you moved to Acrisure? Did you guys have the same section, or what was it?
So when we were at Three Rivers, we were in the old section 210 row A. So when they were building Heinz Field and they send this packet out to, for what kind of seats, our seats actually would have been in the club section if we wanted. But the problem was, even 26 years ago when we were doing all this, getting all this ready, they were already like double or triple what we were paying back then. So you can just imagine, I don't even know how much they are, in the club, like the type of seats that would have been mine. So we just said, we want to just stay in that same area. And they just moved us all the way down to the field in the first row. And they kept the people around us, like friends of ours that sat with us since the 70s. They're on the
really
seats. Yeah, they didn't really, they didn't take everybody away, but some of them stayed, and that we still know today.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, Brandon.
It looks like, Dave, because just my curiosity was piqued because I'm always trying to find a good deal for a game. So I was looking about $482 for face value is on the high end for that section per seat per game for the club level.
There's been times where you wonder how much it would have, like, say they were like over 100 and 20 or 30 back in 2000, 2001. Even ours now, like where my seats are, they do kind of like a lot of teams do, even the Pirates do it. Depending on who you're playing, depends on the price of the ticket. So I may have this year, the tickets went up this year. So I may have a game, I haven't looked at all of them, but I may have a team or two where my tickets are worth almost $300 a game, each ticket. And then you still have a few that are like 180, which it averages out probably close to $180 to $200 a ticket now where I sit. Now they're less than other areas. It's just because of where we sit in the first row, and you got a better view, and where if you're up in peanut heaven in the last row, it's a lot less.
So Dave, let me ask you a question with that. So myself, I'm a partial season ticket holder for the Pirates. And, as you said, it depending who they're playing can dictate the price of the tickets for your game. Do you ever look at that schedule and say, well, I'd really love to see this team, but at the same time, I can put my tickets on a secondary market and get back half my season plan? Do you ever look at doing that? Or do you just say, I've got these tickets, I'm going every game? How do you approach your season tickets? I can honestly
say there's been a few times I did sell my tickets. Like my 2 tickets, because I share 4 with my brother, 2 and 2. And I can't really remember. My kids might have been in college, or might have just been one of those years where I could sell them and make half the money to buy.
They weren't that good.
It was great this year,
right?
But now my son, my older son David, he's like, don't sell them, because there was some. Dallas is a number 1 team you can really sell them for. They'll pay whatever to come and But yeah, I don't sell them anymore because my kids, especially my older one, like he's actually splitting my tickets with me this year. I'm like, hey, it's about time to start paying because they're going up high.
Yeah. Now that bill's gone up every year for me with the Pirates. I know that, but I do. I enjoy the benefits that come with it, and like you were saying too, with some of those later games, it was a whole lot easier in our 20s and 30s to get motivated to go to that Sunday night game, right? It's a little bit older, a little bit harder in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. Say, yeah, the game will be over about 11:30. By the time I get out of the parking lot, it's 12:15. Get home, get to bed, 2:00. I'll be back up for work at 6. Yeah, I'm way
I
past
can tell
those times.
you when I was younger, so say in the 90s, when we used to tailgate outside every game outside of Gate B at Three Rivers, when it was a Monday night game. Now, back then, they were still playing those games at 9 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I would take Monday off. I'd switch. I was still on a schedule, so I could get Monday or Tuesday off, like trading with somebody, and then take a vacation day because you needed to recover by the next day.
Yeah.
But I mean, we would go down there. There was a couple times we just went down there early, like 11 in the morning, waiting for the gate to open. And then once they opened them up, say 1:00, we were there, 8, 9 hours before the game. Then the game was 9 to 12 or so, 9 p.m. to around midnight, But we had some good times. I mean, the last 4 or 5 years, we actually rented our own porta-john in our park.
Yeah. Tell us about that. I've heard Jay talk about some of those stories, the porta-johns.
Well, what happened is the beginning of going down there before the game for me was my cousin Mike had season tickets. He got them in the late 80s, and him and I started going down just, 9. And that was, you got to realize in the late 80s, they weren't that good, 87, 88, So you could go down there at 9:00 and get a parking spot. It wasn't as crazy because they had a few bad years. So we started out doing that, him and I, and then it started early 90s, 92, right around the Collar era. We got more people that had tickets and friends that I met through work and their husbands, and so we started getting together to have a tailgate. And then it just morphed more and more. And then, I had an 86 Chevy Blazer. That was the tailgate machine. We could fit everything in there, put the seats down, just put everything in there.
Wow.
And there were times where we even rented like a U-Haul van and rolled the grill in there to fit. But then all of a sudden there was some sort of, I don't know if they put a flyer out or something. There was I don't even know if they're still in business. I can't remember the name, but they were about these rentals of these porta potties, and it was like $40 a game. So what we used to do is we brought all the, the food, the beer, the drinks, whatever, and friends, anybody that knew we were down there, all we did is everybody paid $5 to cover the cost. And then if I had any money left over, because sometimes you might have 10, sometimes you might have 40. Who knows who's going to show up? But we always had enough food. But everybody would pitch in $5. That was the deal. And all the extra money, the next week, that would pay for the porta-john for the next 2 weeks if I had extra, and it just morphed into, we had some great times, down there, playoff games in the 90s, getting there at 5 a.m. because if you didn't, the line of traffic around the stadium was already going around almost, to the second time at 4 or 5 in the morning. So, and then we'd grab all our stuff and run it to our spot because we had a specific area underneath the overpass by Gate B. And no, we knew everybody around us. And then sometimes people would say, hey, if we give you like $10, can we use your porta-john for the day? And they'd come over and say, that's how we paid for it. I mean, people, you get a few people, they just give you a few bucks and yeah, go ahead. But you had to put a sign on it. People would walk right through your tailgate and try to use that bathroom.
Really?
We used to laugh.
So
but it was some good times. I missed that. And then, but hey, all good things sometimes come to an end. And then when we went to Heinz Field, the parking got different. I mean, we were paying $5 to park down there, and we would pay the attendants an extra $5 if we needed an extra space. As long as it got paid, they didn't care.
Right.
It was pretty easy to do that, back then. Who knows? Maybe that extra $5 went in their pocket, but they never told us we couldn't do that. So we'd say, here, I'll pay for it right now. And I'd give them the money, so we would have the area to if we had a larger party that day.
Hey, let's talk about the food, Dave. What kind of food would you guys bring to the tailgates?
Well,
This
I
is
can
going to be
honestly
good.
say Monday Night Football usually. So my mom and my grandmother on my mom's side was Italian, and they would make my grandmother's meatballs, like a big pot of. So we had a grill that had a side burner, so we'd always get them to make meatballs. So we'd have meatball sandwiches. Then we'd make what are they called? The shish kebabs. We'd get all the stuff, cut the meat, and we'd have them on the grill. I mean, it varied. Sometimes it was just, hamburgers and hot dogs and maybe some kibasi and, like just different things like that. Nothing too fancy, but we always had enough.
Yeah.
There was always enough beer.
Did you guys ever do chili or anything like that?
Yeah, my friend Dawn, who went out to all the games, and my brother-in-law sat with him, he had a recipe that ended up, my cousin knew somebody from his church that worked for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and it got published in like the food section.
Wow.
It was, I forget how they wrote it on. I have it somewhere in my computer buried, but it had a real good kick to it. If I can find it, I'd make it. I've done it before, but yeah, we had a chili, he had a chili that he made that we loved, so yeah, we had different things like that. It's people were making breakfast on Sunday mornings next to us, flipping eggs, and man, it was crazy.
It's gotten so hard to park down there now. I'm sorry, Dad. It's gotten so hard to park. And I mean, especially now I'm just thinking a couple of weeks ago, I went down for a 12:35 Pirate game on a Thursday, and like trying to park, act of God. And I mean, I was there an hour and a half early. They've gotten rid of so much of the parking down on the North Shore, which I get it. That was part of, when they put this whole plan together for PNC and, Heinz, AccuShore, whatever you do want to call it. The plan was to develop a lot, and obviously they still haven't developed as much as they originally said they were going to, but it's just getting so hard to park there. And I know some of the lots now start having signs up like no grills, no this, no that, and they've just really cracked down on a lot of what you can do down there. And it's just, it's lost some of that appeal. And it's, it's when you start talking to, kids your son's age, or and start telling them of how it used to be, they probably can't even really fathom it, because everything's changed so much down there, because parking has become a business unto itself in the city, and it's definitely become a much bigger challenge than it was in the 90s. Even in the early 2000s, it wasn't as bad as it is now, but now it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah, you just had to roll down there on Sundays in the 90s and pay your $5, whatever. I think it was $5.
Yeah,
and it was cheap. And then now unless you get a free, like we'll park in the casino now, we'll get a free parking. But if you're not a free parker there,
right,
like $80 to park there.
Yeah,
I mean, and like in the casino. But going back to that tailgate era, when we moved to Heinz Field, my cousin worked in a building over by the West End Bridge, and he said, why don't we start coming over here, and we can park under the bridge based on the weather, and then I have a key fob. If someone got to use the bathroom, we can just run in the building. So we started doing that the first year or two. Then we met the guy in the building that had a restaurant, who has become one of my good friends, for the last almost 24 years. And it was going to be cold one Sunday or the next week. And he's like, hey, why don't we tailgate inside? And we never went back outside again. And then we would go down there and play poker, and he'd make food. It was crazy. We did that from the early 2000s till he sold his business in 2019. We'd go down at 7 a.m., play poker. Sometimes we'd have somebody bring donuts and drinking, and he'd make stuff for lunch, and we'd just walk to the game.
Yeah, you develop.
I like that.
New friends.
That's nice.
That's cool. You develop new friends and memories.
We had a lot of good people doing that.
That's wild. That's wild. Well, hey, Dave, before we get off of that topic, let's look a little bit at this year's club, this year's team. Just saw yesterday that Drew Aller inked a 4-year contract with the Steelers, and the quarterback position for them, like we've talked about before, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I've often told people that if you really want to know about the Pittsburgh Steelers, tune into DK Pittsburgh on Sports, because DK and Chris do a hell of a job covering the team, and they'll give you the skinny on what's going on. But I think the Steelers' plan is, if Will Howard doesn't light it up this spring, and they're going to give him a chance to do that, then he's going to be moved out he'll be gone. They'll keep Mason to back up Aaron Rodgers, and then hopefully they'll Drew Aller will get the same shot the following year. But like we talked about before, they're definitely going to draft the number one quarterback in 2027. There's too many guys projected to be number one picks. But so what do you think about this year's quarterback situation with the team?
Well, I'm okay. I originally, before last year, I wasn't quite a Rodgers fan for him coming here.
Yeah.
But I didn't, really have to deal with him when he was in Green Bay and so forth. But, to see how he was there, in the community and so forth. But he kind of grew on me after he started, showing up on, programs and in its training camp and everything. And I don't know if because everybody kept saying, the type of person he is, but then it just seemed like, I don't know, did he change? I don't know. You may know more than me, but he kind of grew on me, and I'm okay with him coming back this year. I think he had a decent season. I mean, he's older, but he gave it what he could give, with the rate touchdown to interception ratio. You got to keep Mason, I guess, as a backup, because if something does happen to him, at least he's been around. And the two other guys, Eller and
Howard,
the one from Ohio State?
Yeah.
Howard, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They got to get a chance. I mean, Howard's been here. This will be the second year. He really didn't have a chance to do anything because he got hurt last year, right?
Yeah. Right.
In training camp. So gonna have to give him, if they need to, give him some reps if he gets hurt, if Rodgers gets hurt.
I think
so
we'll
see.
Saying.
I mean, hey, I'm an optimistic person when it comes to Pittsburgh sports. I always hope they're gonna win. I try not to be down, but whenever things start happening, that's when you start, getting disgusted about it. But that's the way sports is.
Yeah. Brad?
And I think when you're talking about Rodgers, like I don't know if you've seen this past week, he was posting pictures on social media with his family, who he's been very distant with the last decade plus. I don't know if this is if this is just kind of that sometimes people go through moments in life where the realization of age kind of hits you, finality of something, and maybe he's softened a bit, maybe it's hopefully for him, that personal side, he looked pretty happy in those pictures, and that's kind of been a well-documented thing for him. So, I think that was good. And, maybe he has changed a little bit. Sometimes when you're staring at the end of a career, that can be a sobering moment for people, and maybe that's been that way for him. And I mean, my hope is, he comes in and can share whatever wisdom he can. Obviously, the greats, it's hard for them to explain to other people what to do because it's just so natural for them. And Rodgers, obviously he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, probably within 6 years from now. But hopefully he can just instill some of that and some of those younger quarterbacks. And, maybe we can get lucky and get one of those late round quarterback picks to work out, like San Francisco did, Dallas did. It doesn't always have to be a first rounder, but there's some luck involved there too. So hopefully, we can put something together there real soon. That's my hope.
Yeah, that's all we can have is hope every year, because you just never know what's going to show up. I mean, they could shoot out the beginning and be 6-1, or they could be 2-6 and then run off 8 games. Who knows? You never know.
Right.
You just have to keep everybody healthy, especially the main. Either your line, your quarterback. I mean, you start losing people like that, it's disastrous for a season.
And what you said there, David, is so accurate, that health factor. The reality is, whether we like it or not, the way this season is going to come down to one word, and that is health. If the offensive line can stay healthy, Rodgers is going to stay upright. He's going to stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
If that line can stay healthy, the running backs stay healthy. Wide receivers, they're onto themselves, out there. But I like what they've done with the depth there. Finally addressed wide receiver too. I like what they did in the draft with Bernard. I think that's a great pickup there. I think they're definitely building something there. And the defensive side, again, it's going to come down to how does that defensive line? Can Cam stay healthy? Can TJ stay healthy? Can Highsmith stay healthy? Can some of these younger guys that they brought in, can they mix them in? Can they keep that going? It's truly going to come down to health.
And let's hope they stay healthy. I'd like to see another, a better season, and kind of go a little bit deeper and not, we lost him.
Well, he'll be right back. He'll be right back. So he was having some audio issues. Yeah, and that's the thing. I'd love to see what they can do, because you've got a lot of money invested, much more than you did last year, on the offensive side of the ball. So you've definitely, step back up there. They're coming back in. They're going to try to, definitely get the ball out a little bit more. I'm excited to see what McCarthy does with the offense, the changes there. How do you think the offense is going to change under McCarthy? What do you think is going to be the difference with him versus what we've seen the last several years under the Tomlin regime?
Well, I think, we had Tomlin, who was the last two coaches we've had were defensive coaches, so they had their hands in that. Of course, they have to make decisions for offense occasionally, but it's kind of like a flip-flop thing. I think McCarthy I think he's calling the plays, correct? Did he say he was calling the plays?
He is.
Yes.
All of them.
But I don't think, like when Tomlin's been here, he had his hands on that defense no matter who our defensive coordinator was. So it's going to be a little different having an offensive coach. And I'm sure the majority of the defensive is going to be on that coordinator, and he's not jumping in there trying to do that too. So it's going to be just a different dynamic. And I hope the offense becomes dynamic because we have the receivers. You stay healthy, Rodgers stays healthy and he has time. I mean, who knows? That opens up the running game then too.
Yeah.
Excited about Pittman in a true number 2 role also, because I have some friends who are Indianapolis fans, having lived in the Indy, Cincinnati area for a while. So I've got some friends of different teams. And with Pittman, I think when they were trying to make him the one in Indy, teams were able to stay on him and he couldn't always get the separation he needed to. So I'm excited to see what he does in that number 2 role where he has some more people around him to where all the pressure of the world is not sitting on his shoulders.
Right.
It's more shared. So maybe talk about that. What do you think about the additions of Pittman and the upgrades overall on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, I think our offensive line, the way they're moving around and they added a couple of players. I thought they were going to be getting better last year, but I think this year it's really going to be a better line.
Yeah, they're deep.
Of course, adding Pittman, we didn't have that second receiver last year.
No, ever.
You get Metcalf, and you can't rely on one guy. He's getting mauled out there. You know what I mean? You just can't do it. You have to have somebody that's going to open it up, and they both can thrive. So I think we're going to see a lot more. What was the year? Was it okay? What was our Killer Bees era with Roethlisberger and Bell and AB?
Yeah.
We were scoring like 30 points a game. We haven't seen that in a while,
Yeah. Consistently.
But, I like a little bit of both. I like to see the defense, play defense. I don't want to give up 30 points a game, but have to score 40. We used to see that a lot with New England. They could outscore you. They could out throw you, no matter how many points you were scoring, but, no, I think it's gonna, like I said, I'm optimistic. And I think we're going to have a decent season and get back into the playoffs again.
And, the other thing, too, is how about their running back situation now, too? They probably have 2 of the better running backs in the league with Rico Dowdle and Jaylen Warren, right? And both these guys can catch the ball. Warren's a little bit better blocker, but Rico can also block. And don't forget about that Nowakowski guy that they draft, I think out of Indiana, right, Brandon? Nowakowski, the backup tight end. He's going to play, too. This guy's big. He's the one that actually is taking Cam Hayward's position. Cam going to the Raiders now to play this year. Wish him all the best. He's a good, solid player for Pittsburgh. But no, they do have some weapons, and let's just hope the offensive line, steps up and does what they need to do with, of course, moving, Fautano and McCormick over to the left side. And so, they help Rodgers out a little more. So that's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. But they got to be excited for McCarthy because, look, this is a guy who won 12 games 3 years in a row in Dallas. He knows offense. He's tremendous that way. So, and then with Patrick Graham, they're going to let him run the defense. So, man, it's going to be interesting. They got some coaches here too.
Yeah, it's a whole. I believe it's just going to be fun just to see the difference because we know what we've been seeing for 18 years or whatever. The offensive line, we had such a good offensive line from around when, like 2011, 12, till all them guys started to retire by 19. And then I just felt they did such a disservice the last couple years that Roethlisberger was here and he's running first. And they're just pulling guys from other teams that played there for 3 or 4 years and plugging them in. They should have been throwing them young guys in there, right after these older guys, like DeCastro, retired and all that. They did. I think they did a disservice to Roethlisberger those last couple years without, just throwing guys in there to fill in instead of just trying to get these young guys out of college, just like we just did in the last couple years, up to off. And so I think it would have been a little bit better with him if they would have did that at the end of the teens there, 18, 19, start getting guys. And they were a real big disservice, I think, the last couple years of his career.
Well, and then he didn't want to make a lot of changes either because of Pouncey and, those guys that were all tight, good friends. But you guys saw, Brandon and I talk about it all the time. I mean, Roethlisberger towards the end, he got to the point he's less mobile in some ways than Rodgers is right now. So that hurt him. And then plus he had the elbow injury, where he had to get surgery. Right. He was never able to throw. But the difference between Ben and Rodgers is Rodgers can still zip the football. This guy can throw the ball. I mean, so is he mobile? Nope. But, hopefully McCarthy can design some, a system for them to be successful. So, we'll see how that looks.
I think he's mobile enough of what you need, in the NFL today. No, he's not a scrambler. And I mean, the other thing with Rodgers, too, is like you look at his injury history, the guy's been pretty lucky with the arm. I mean, he's had some injuries, don't get me wrong, but it's always seemed to be the lower body, occasionally a thumb here, thumb there, but he's stayed pretty healthy. He had some collarbone issues in the teens, but he's kept that arm intact. And you watch it, the way that ball comes out of his arm versus the past few quarterbacks we've had, it's a different release. You can just tell that arm still has a lot of juice in it. Also, him sitting the first several years of his career. I mean, give Green Bay a lot of credit back with that draft. If you guys remember with that draft, Rodgers was talked about that he was going to go number one. I think San Francisco was number one that year, and everybody expected them to take him because he was local there. And then he fell. Yeah, and he fell. And then finally Green Bay takes him when they still have Brett Favre, and they just let him sit there. And I mean, that's why he's still playing. That's why he's still playing now, is because they let him just sit. And I mean, that takes a lot of guts from a franchise to do that. It would be nice if the Steelers could do the same thing, but in the NFL, the way the cap works today and cap space, that's probably not going to happen with the next one. Obviously they let Ben sit for a little while too until Tommy Maddox got hurt, and that changed those plans very quickly. But give Rodgers credit. He's stayed healthy. He's kept that arm very, very healthy throughout his career.
Well, and I'm not comparing Drew Aller to Rodgers by any stretch, but Tom Art said as recently as yesterday when he signed his contract, this guy, Drew Aller, can throw the football with anybody in the league. This is how good of an arm this guy has. And I know that from hearing the reports that Rodgers has been working with both Howard and Aller, but the fact that you get to work with a future Hall of Famer and he's filling your head with all these different things and, asking you, okay, what happens when they're too high? What happens when they're single high? What happens when they're doing this? How do you do that? That's invaluable right there. I mean, that is, because this guy has talent. So, let's hope that they get an opportunity to see what he's doing. And listen, and I'm rooting for Howard, too. I'm hoping Howard comes out and balls out in spring ball, because if he does, he's going to be the number 2 guy there. And it's going to be really interesting. Could you imagine the following year having Aller, Howard, and, one of the other number 1 picks in camp battling for that job? I mean, oh my God, that would be tremendous to see that. Youth, that's what they need, is young guys. And you need a lot of them, right? They don't want. So interesting. Yeah,
definitely.
Hey, Dave, before we go, tell me, what does this mean?
The terrible towel.
Yes, sir.
Myron Cope's terrible towel. Well, I'm going to tell you personally.
Tell us.
When I was growing up and that terrible towel started, in one of the, I think it was 75. He told everybody, to bring a towel, a gold towel, a black towel, a yellow towel, whatever kind of, you could get something close to our colors during the during the playoffs. And it was at that time, in those years of the third and the fourth Super Bowl into the 80s, you were only supposed to bring the terrible towel out during the playoffs. And I still follow that. I mean, my brother, my kids, they'll bring the terrible towel to every game, and I will not bring a terrible towel until the playoffs, because that's just how I remember it. And that's just, I always tell them, nope, it's always been for the playoffs. I mean, I know that, it does a lot of good based on Allegheny Valley schools that, Myron's son was there. And I think that's great. But personally, I just don't use a terrible towel unless it's for a playoff game.
Wow. That is, because now everyone brings it. That's kind of cool. Brandon, what about I was going to ask you, not that it's switch sports here, but do you have a cone at all for the Pirates?
I do, because I have a child. See? So, he saw the cone as we're walking to PNC one day. And, I still have, they had it on the broadcast a couple weeks ago, green weenie. I still have one of those from, what was that, 91? So, but with the towel, Dave, you got me thinking. When I was living outside the area and I was outside of Cincy, I'd go whenever the Steelers were playing at Bengals Stadium. And I remember one time it was a Monday night game, and it was me and my buddy, my wife, and her sister. We went, and Steelers did something really good. And I was always a very respectful visiting fan. I didn't bring the towel because I didn't want to draw attention or anything. But I will say it was a very big play on a Monday Night Football game, and the Steelers took a massive lead. And I just remember standing up and I just go, "Who day, we day," and someone throws a beer at me, and I turn around, it lands flat side up, like it's still in the cup. And I go, "You just wasted a lot of money on this, folks. Just letting you know, you wasted a lot of money on this." I said, "I didn't even bring a towel," and so Dave, I understand the, with the towel, saving that for special occasions. I get it completely.
Did you get up there? How many times did you get up there for a Steeler game? When
I went to
Kentucky,
Cincinnati.
right? Is that where you lived?
I was in Kentucky for 11 years. I went to Cincinnati, I want to say 6 or 7 times. I went to Cincinnati. I went to Indianapolis once, and I'll say this: the stadium at Indianapolis is immaculate. If you've never been to Lucas Oil Field,
I've been there a couple times.
That is, man. I went, and I think it was 2016 when they played on Thanksgiving. The Steelers played the Colts on Thanksgiving. Went up. My buddy came down. We went up again. Just wonderful. Went up with my wife as well, and it's just beautiful environment, so easy to get around, and it looks so big, like you're not going to be able to see anything on the field. But we were way up in what you'd call peanut heaven. But I'll say this: beautiful view where we were sitting, climate controlled. Just, they knocked that place out of the park. Really easy to get in and out of as well. So just
definitely.
That's my favorite.
Trip.
My favorite one.
We did a bus trip the first time I went there. I used to do some bus trips. We did maybe about 9 bus trips to different, whether it was Cleveland, Cincinnati. You got to stay within a decent drive. I mean, Cincinnati was like 4.5 hours. I mean, plus you're stopping when you're in a bus, so it takes a little longer. But when we went to Indy, we did a bus trip there. So that was probably the furthest we ever did. But you had to stay there. Say you got there Saturday afternoon, we didn't go home till Monday. You had, was that, what? I'm thinking, maybe we did come home on the bus trip. I think we did come home that day, and it's too much. You're talking 5.5, 6 hours.
Yeah, it's
the other time we stayed in an Airbnb right outside the stadium, so you could see it from the house. You could walk down the street. But last year we were just in LA at SoFi. Now that stadium's awesome. That's the best stadium I've ever been in. They did a great job, building how they built that and the architecture. And, I'd go back there again. Brad, you never went. You haven't been down. Have you been in Jerry's World down there at all in his stadium?
Yes. Dallas is tremendous. I mean, the Cowboys Stadium is absolutely tremendous. I mean, their facilities down there, as much as I hate to admit it, but I'll give credit where credit is due, they just really do it up right. And I'll tell you what else is impressive too is we got to tour their cafeteria, and it was man, it was unbelievable. All the different things they had, chef, whatever you want, the whole bit. So yeah, it's kind of interesting, man. They do it up right down there. They've got the facilities. Their weight room is huge. I mean, really, really big down there. So, yeah, but boy, the memories
Yeah, I
of
wasn't sure if you
NFL.
made it there or not. I know you're not too far.
Yeah.
I did make it there for the Super Bowl, but that's just that unfortunately the only time I went to the Super Bowl was when they lost. There. So
yeah, that's not a good memory.
But it was still a good trip. But it's an amazing stadium too. Except for I guess they didn't know what they were doing adding them extra seats on that game where all those people didn't have seats.
Exactly.
I got lucky. I had good seats and didn't have to get up and move.
That's cool. Well, listen, before we wrap up here, let's all give our predictions on what we think the team is going to do here, and then what we'll do is we will convene, around after the bye week, see how we're doing halfway through the year, and then at the end of the year, Dave, we'll have you back and do a season wrap up and find out if we're happy, sad, or whether we're 9-8. So Dave,
good.
You're our guest. You go first. What's their record going to be this year?
Well, let's see here. I know they got a rough in the middle there somewhere. There's some bad teams, or I should say some very good teams. Sorry about that. Here.
No, Louis good. He's good.
Louis said you can get that out of there. I think, at the minimum, we're going to be 10-7, but I think we can make it 11-6.
Okay,
that's my optimism.
Okay, Brandon, go ahead. What do you think? He's thinking. Get ready.
The standard is still the standard, and it will be 9-8. I'm sorry. I look at the schedule. I look at the schedule. The Bucks are tough. We always split with the Bengals. Ravens, always tough games. Panthers are up and coming. Jaguars are not the Jaguars they've been in the past. The Texans were a playoff team last year. That December schedule, that's a brutal schedule if you really start to look at the way they end the year with really, beginning of November all the way through January 10th. I mean, they've got a gauntlet to run right there. So, I mean, obviously so much changes with the NFL. I mean, training camp changes everything right there with injuries.
Yeah.
But, if everything were to stay status quo, I think 9-8 and probably sneak in with a wild card.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I'm going to say 11-6. And the reason why I'm going to say 11-6 is because if you guys take a look back through the years, Joe Burrow, he's a China doll. He gets hurt all the time. Lamar Jackson, when was the first time he completed a whole season without getting hurt? He usually gets hurt a couple of times in there, right? Cincinnati's going to be better on defense, but they still have offensive line issues. Cleveland's going to be the Browns. They're just going to be Cleveland. They're probably going to win 4 or 5 games, maybe 6 games. So I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say 11-6. So we'll come back kind of mid-season and see how we're doing. And Dave, I'll give you the last word here, and then we'll throw it to Brandon, and then we'll close it out. So, but hey, man,
since
we appreciate you
brought
being
up
with
a couple of the games, that are tough. Let's hope we beat Tampa because that's our away game this year.
And you're going.
I hear that place is wonderful. I hear it's absolutely wonderful. So
yeah, we got everything set up. We're going to wait for. My son knows somebody that may, before we buy the tickets online, knows someone that we might be able to get the tickets from. So, and we're only 15 minutes from the stadium. I already bought my parking across the street from the stadium, so we're all ready to go. Airbnb's done. We're all good to go.
Man, that is fantastic, son.
So let's just hope for a good season, everybody.
Yeah. I agree. Brandon?
I think we've covered it pretty well today. Dave, enjoy the trip down to Tampa. Like I said, I have some friends, they're season ticket holders, and they fly down all the time to catch games in Tampa. And they sing the praises of that stadium through and through. They just say it's wonderful, and it's always nice weather down there too in October and November to watch a football game,
Yeah, what is it, October 18th, I think.
Correct.
So it should be nice down there. And we're staying Saturday to Tuesday, so got to get an extra day or 2 out of the deal,
Heck yeah. Okay.
Well, guys, thank you so much for a great show. We'd like to thank our audience for tuning in to the Yin's Dad and Mine podcast. Brandon and I will be back in a couple of weeks here to hopefully talk about the Pirates going into the trade deadline. Hopefully they'll continue and come back from that real tough loss against the Cubbies last night. But we appreciate you being with us. And until next time, so long, everybody.